that today is episode 35 of KTLO, Keeping the Learning On. And we have the crew assembled, and we have some guests with us again today. This is great. And in case you were wondering what today's topic is, it's thank you, thank you, thank you. Just because it's that time of year, I think, is why we picked this. Is that why we picked this? I'm not sure why we picked this, but that's one of the reasons we picked this. And here's our lovely graphic for today. And it wants me to end the meeting. I'm not sure why. I don't want to end the meeting. I just want to share the screen. Thank you. There we go. There's no attitude like gratitude. Oh, Roy made a rhyme. Roy, good. No, Roy, not good. And we have the usual core group assembled: Patty Blackstaff, Greg Sanker, Simone Jo Moore, and moi. And with us is Kathy Veldboom. And we have someone in the waiting room. So I will get there in a moment. Just give you the heads up, as this is how you can reach us on our Twitter handles. You can go to the website, ktllearn.com, read a little bit more about what this is all about. But let's just say that today is Gratitude Day, and I am the interviewer du jour, so I'll be asking these people tough questions about gratitude, and we're going to find out why they think gratitude is important and all of that good stuff. So here we are. We're in the right view, and we're ready to go. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm going to start with Greg Sanker, because he didn't know I was going to start with him, and he has absolutely no idea what I'm going to ask him. Greg, what's gratitude to you? What does it mean? Why is it important?
Wow. Yeah, that's like saying, Greg, it's about 7 o'clock where you're at. What's the meaning of life? Gratitude, I think, goes beyond just being thankful. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. Or being appreciative. I think gratitude kind of transcends into the way that we think about things, the way that we perceive things. So that it's not a put on event or a tortured choice to say, in the face of this thing, I'm going to choose to be grateful. It's more of your instinct is to be grateful for the things that you're able to do, for the circumstances you find yourself in, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a way of thinking. Hey, Todd, welcome. Roy's asking me a tough question for which I have no earthly idea what I'm going to say. So welcome. And Mark Thomas just joined us. Welcome, guys. So I hope that we get to explore kind of the mind frame around gratitude, and more of the lifestyle, or just the way of thinking that gratitude permeates us.
That's a wonderful explanation. I think, from my perspective, I think gratitude is just one of those big things, one of those main areas of emotional focus that we have. And of course, this is the time of year here in the fall that we express thanks as a society. We have days set aside for it. Both, the Canadian people have to have everything their own, just because they don't want to be called USA North, so they have a different Thanksgiving Day from the US of A. But that's all good. It's all good, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that. But Patty, I'm gonna come over to you next, and is there science behind gratitude, or is it just touchy-feely, emotionally thingy?
It is so far from touchy-feely, emotionally thingy. So gratitude is a key component to human resiliency, right? Gratitude is researched in many different, has been researched in many different areas. So Dr. Jeffrey Huffman from Massachusetts General did some research and says it's a predictor of superior cardiovascular health. Patients who have kept journals for 8 weeks showed reductions in inflammatory biomarkers when they wrote their gratefulness down. But a really key one is a study in behaviors research and therapy that found Vietnam War veterans with higher gratitude suffered less from PTSD. So there's absolutely science behind it. It increases the meanings in one's life, which actually then lessens suicidal tendency and lower stress and depression. So gratitude has a lot of amazing qualities to be able to help you along in life. And how it works is there's dopamine hits our brain when we show gratitude. So it's about showing gratitude for things and for people and experiences around us. And it's a shared experience. When we document it, though, it goes one step further. So when we put gratitude in writing, our anterior cingulate cortex releases serotonin, which increases our willpower and motivation. And when you think about that, this little virtual thankfulness is kind of a powerful tool for shaping how we see the world, wiring our brain in ways that promote resiliency. And it's about practicing gratitude can take us out of our dark self. Right? It's really easy. The human condition is that we have a tendency to look for things that shape maybe our self-worth, i.e. finding evidence for why maybe we don't fit in the world. And gratitude can actually shift that and rewire our brains.
Interesting. So tons of science behind it. It's not just a thing.
Not just a thing.
So Simone, how do you see gratitude in general? I think you have a more specific definition than most of us do. So what is it to you?
Yeah, one of the interesting things, normally when people think of gratitude, they normally immediately just start to think with thank you. And the interesting about thank you is that it's such a normal part of, how we've grown up to be courteous, and when somebody gives us something and we just say thank you, or that type of thing. I mean, even in English, there's 27 different ways you can say thank you. It's amazing. Whether we say ta or cheers or thanks for that, mate. Oh, you beauty. Just to throw an Australian one in there. Stuff like that. There's lots of different ways we actually say thank you. And it can be the word we use, the vocabulary, or it can be the sound, the manner in which we do it. And then you've got, well, how would we say thank you in all the different languages? Because again, there's this whole building of underneath of languages. So for example, in Hawaiian, mahalo actually incorporates the whole ha of breath, and that you're expending part of your life with me, and that is, I am grateful for that, that you have done that with me. So there's a whole host of different ways that when we think of thank you, that really gratitude goes beyond just saying that word. And on the science side of it, as Patty has said, when we get to that point of having been through the serotonin, we actually have this feeling of trust, and peace with that. There's the social bonding that occurs, and that feeling of fulfillment is really important. Those gratitude journals, which we during holistic counseling sessions and things like that we get people to write down what are they grateful for in that day or in that moment, is a way for them to reconnect back with why they are of value. What difference did that actually make in their life? And I think that's where we come to the fact how it affects us then on the bio level, by having that chemical shift and that chemical change. It can make such a difference to our lives. There's so many different ways to express it. It's a real recognition of our enjoyment. It's a recognition of the qualities of someone or something. It's showing appreciation and a return of kindness that we've actually been shown.
Return of kindness. That's pretty cool too. So it can be a reciprocal thing as well. Somebody's kind to you, you are grateful to them for their kindness, and by being grateful, you're showing them kindness back. That's a cool thing. That's an interesting
Acknowledgement
concept.
and of their value in doing so.
When you were talking about the different languages, I was thinking through some of the ways that people say thank you. Mille grazie, 1,000 thanks in Italian, mille grazie. Grazie mille. Some people say it. Well, some people say it together. We say many thanks in English, merci beaucoup in French. So thanks a lot. Muchas gracias. Again, many thanks or much thanks in Spanish. It's cool. This is why I love language, folks. I can't get away from it. I just love it. So, Kathy, what does gratitude mean to you, and how are some ways that you express it to people?
Gratitude to me, when I look at thankfulness and gratitude, and I have a favorite quote that I like that's by Henry Frederick Emile, which is, thankfulness is the beginning of gratitude. Gratitude is a completion of thankfulness. Thankfulness may consist merely of words. Gratitude is shown in action. And I think that it really hits home with me, because when I get up and I think of all that I am thankful for, and there is so much. If I sit in this room and I think I live in Minnesota, I'm in a warm room right now. I got up, I could brush my teeth this morning. I could get a great cup of coffee. I mean, those are all things that I'm thankful for, which then feed into how I'm going to go out in the world today and express my gratitude and show gratitude for the simple things that people do. You know, at the grocery store, when they bag your groceries for you, being grateful and thankful for that, and then demonstrating my gratefulness for my relationships with people. And I think that's where the connection comes in from business. It is the thankfulness for what your team is doing, and you show that in gratitude by being a leader that demonstrates that they truly value what your team is doing.
And you brought up leadership there, and I'm going to zoom over to Patty. How does gratitude benefit individuals and leaders, not only immediately but in the long run? Is there a way that it does?
Cicero said, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. And it ties in with authenticity. It ties in with being vulnerable and authentic with your team. And I got a little story. So when I work with teams, either in OD work, or whether it's mergers and acquisitions, or whether it's organizational change, one of the things that we encourage the leader to do is sit down and write some thank you notes and write them to the team. They are actually asking to make a huge difference for their team. And I started doing that after I read a story about a former Campbell Soup CEO who wrote over 30,000 thank you notes by hand to his employees to thank them for all they have done. There is a merger and acquisition that I was working on, and both sides said, yeah, we could do that. We could do that. One side sat down and they looked at the individual and they said, you know what, we're going to write thank you notes and we're going to tell them why. And the other one wrote a canned letter to everyone, to their team, as they were merging. And the one who wrote a canned letter, they first opened it and they said, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And then they showed it to their pal, and their pal's was identical. And then that moved through the organization. It just made them angry because it was so inauthentic. But the person on the other side of the merger and acquisition was so authentic and so valuable that that team actually shifted their loyalty from their original just based on thank you notes. there are so many things that we can do to thank people and recognize them for what they do. But what that creates is less exhaustion and less cynicism. They tend to, people who are appreciated tend to be more proactive in their behaviors. They have a higher rating of health and safety and less days off, higher job satisfaction. But the one thing that every leader tells me is, how do I motivate these people? Anyone who's ever done any work in motivation understands that the only motivation that matters is the intrinsic, because that's what really powers people. And gratitude actually touches on the intrinsic motivation for meeting goals and strategy. So it includes making people feel like they belong and connected. And we have talked many times in this session about belonging. When I feel like I'm a valuable contributor, I feel like I matter to the organization. So we're drawn to gratitude, but moreover, it actually comes back to the leader. And what happens is the leader themselves, who've been grateful for others, receives a bigger piece of the team performance pie, I might say. Anyway, I want to say a quick hi to Todd. We've got about 20 years of working history. So welcome, Todd. Thanks for joining us.
Cool deal. Thank you, Patty, and hello, Todd. Thanks for joining this group. We will get you into the spot. We will drag you into the spotlight in a bit. I was remembering, Patty, when you were describing that the interrelations with the CEOs and sending the letters and so forth. I was talking with the guy whose name is Sean, who headed up the Microsoft MVP program for a while. And it was basically users helping users. And one of the things that they did at some point was they took their top performers, the users that were providing the most information to other users, and they sent them a little thank you. And these are people that put hours into this work. They sent them a little thank you. Just that, no money, no prizes, just a thank you. And what happened was, much to their amazement, the performance of that cohort increased by about 30%, just because they got a thank you. And that has stuck with me for a long time. And it's so, for many reasons, it's important. It's not just, as we've been saying, it's not just an emotional thing where you say thank you to somebody. It actually has repercussions for all aspects of human personal relations. So Todd, I'm going to put you in the spotlight now and say, where were you on the night of April? Oh no, that's a different question. What are your thoughts as you're listening to the conversation here about gratitude? What do you think about gratitude when you hear the word, or when you think about that feeling or that action? What do you think?
So, a couple of things. There's a philosophical foundation. I think all of you touched on it to one degree or another. It is the acknowledgement that you are not in your own universe. There's an ontological fundamentality to gratitude. It's you reaching out and recognizing that your existence, is not an existence without those to whom you give gratitude. There's also this, my current CEO is, and I work for Vestas Wind Turbines in Denmark. And he's got this phrase that he carries around as he's executing some organizational change, and it's all for one and one for all. Now that's a cute saying. We've heard it growing up, all of us. But the evidence of all for one and one for all, as I see it in our organization, is gratitude. You really are in it for your team members, and your team members are there for you as you execute this change. And the evidence of that is the gratitude you share or fail to share.
Awesome. And
that's it for now.
A lot of us do fail to share it, right? We may feel it after somebody does something for us, or something is completed that we were hoping would be completed or done. We may feel that, but we don't express it. And that's that's a problem, I think. And it's a problem that surfaces in places like family relations and so forth and so on. Greg, you're itching to say something over there. So
I am. That's a really incredibly good point, because I've, for as long as I can remember, I always have really, really positive thoughts around people who do things or accomplish things or have skills. But it's something that I recognize that nobody benefits from thoughts that remain inside of your head if you don't express them, if you don't take tangible action to say, "Hey, Roy, I appreciate you." Or whatever form that takes, it has no value. And so that's something that I've practiced intentionally. It's like letting those thoughts out, putting actions to the thoughts, those great thoughts.
and in I think this happens in families a lot, as I'm thinking about this failure to express gratitude. I think it happens in families a lot. But then is there a risk? I'm going to go to you, Simone, on this one. Is there a risk that you take if you're constantly expressing gratitude, that it just becomes rote, that you just, yeah, thank you. If you always say thank you, and how do you keep it real, as it were?
It definitely. It's kind of like it becomes an autumn. Okay, it's later here in France, and there's been a wine glass or two this afternoon already. Well, as happens in France, the autonomic response. Oh my God, I got the word out. There is an autonomic response that actually develops when we get in polite company. Our mothers raised us to be courteous, or our fathers, gave was a big finger waggling thing, which is an outcry to Paul Wilkinson there with the pointy finger. Yes, exactly. That we just automatically say, "Oh, thank you. Thanks, cool, great, brilliant, catch you later." It almost becomes this autonomic response. So it kind of reminds me, though, that we really need to come back to this acknowledgement, because what we're doing, we're acknowledging this person. And it reminds me of when we've talked about some of this stuff before, the South African greeting of Sawubona. It means I see you. So when we truly say thank you, when we want to actually be grateful, we need to build that into our brain as an autonomic response. In how many different ways can we actually express this? Because each person is an individual, each person is unique. So how is it that I'm now going to turn around to this person and say, you know what, because each of you will take that in a different way. And for me, the really critical aspect of that, and whether it's family or work, the same thing applies. We're all unique, even if we happen to come from the same DNA tree, that we are acknowledging the value that person has had. We are acknowledging the engagement that they've taken the time and the breath to have with us. And I think that no matter how busy we are, if you don't take that breath, we are actually dismissing that person from our life. And that dismissal is what leads to the stress. That dismissal is what leads to that, oh, well, what was the point of doing that? It didn't make much difference to that person, that kind of thing. So as a leader, incredibly important to understand the unique differences amongst our people, how they receive and understand their value, how we might say thank you in different ways that will be good for them, and that it actually gives them hope. Because it wasn't a finality thing. I don't, sometimes when they finish something and they give you something, it's like, okay, that's done, that's over, right, see ya, cool. But it's like, what can I hope for the next time? Or what can I hope to do or to contribute to? Because, hey, this was nice. This felt good. That was brilliant. That was I made a difference to that. And that gives us hope to continue for the next time.
Cool. Thank you. See, I just said thank you, and I meant it. Patty, you had something to add, I think.
Yeah, I do. I love what Simone said because even in the earliest parenting books, and let's be real, we're all just children in bigger clothes, right? So the earliest parenting books say that don't just say thank you. Tell them why you're thanking them. Don't just appreciate the work they're doing. Tell them why they're doing it. And they say that from the earliest days on, and that holds true well into adulthood. If we can recognize, I really like how you did X, Y, Z, because we're creating an opportunity for personal development. If we see strengths in someone, if we appreciate someone for something they've done, then being able to actually lean into why instead of just saying, yeah, that was good, thanks. What was good? Let's really define it because we'll get more of it.
Cool. And speaking of acknowledgement, I've been terribly remiss in introducing two other members of the cast and crew here. Right there behind Patty, just over her right shoulder. Patty, if you say a few words, the camera will go to you and introduce
Okay.
your friend.
This is yeah, but.
And over Simone's left shoulder, actually one of the newer members of the congregation here is, who's that, Simone?
This is Bert, and he's a PNG house spirit, and he's there because he scares away all the bad stuff that wants to try and get in.
See that? Yeah. I have a shelf full of stuffed animals I'm not going to introduce, but that's another story. Greg?
I was just saying, here's a guitar, so there's that.
Yeah, and Greg brings the music into our life.
Yes, I do. Hey, I wanted to share a story that kind of caught me off guard because as a leader, I told you that I good thoughts contained inside one's head does nobody any good. So one time I had joined an organization where I was asked to drive a fair amount of change. And I was meeting with individual groups on certain pieces of that. That's entirely beside the point. But there was one member of that team who had really stepped out of the status quo and really said, I'll try. And I recognized her in a meeting. I said, and so has really done some good work. Her face turned white. She looked at me like, I cannot believe that you just violated a sacred trust. And we talked later, and she never got to the point where she had any trust in me at all, because she felt that that was an egregious violation of everything that she held near and dear. And she was mortified that I had called her out, not just because of humility, but simply because of the dynamics in the group, because of a lot of factors in her life. And so I took away from that something that I intended out of complete sincerity. I take away from that you really need to know people. You need to understand where people are at. So calling somebody out publicly may not be their, language of love, or may not be how they like to be appreciated, or, handing somebody a coffee card could seem really, insincere to somebody, and just, a bump on the shoulder could be all you need to somebody else. So you gotta be engaged with people before you can really, I think, have a meaningful connection with that individual. And so that's kind of a lesson that I've learned. It's like if you feel gratitude or you feel thankfulness for people and want to express it, be mindful of them. This is about them, not about you.
I think, Greg, that pangs off what I was saying. Everyone is unique in the way that they like to be appreciated, and there are some people. It's like those that find it difficult, and there are many. Find it difficult to receive a compliment, because gratitude for them is very much like a compliment. And I don't think you can actually discuss gratitude without actually talking about compliments. Again, neither one. We want gratitude, not platitudes. And some people will feel like a compliment is sometimes like a platitude. And I think, yes, we have to be mindful of that, and also in the space that they're in, because there are people that do not want to be spotlighted. They like working behind the scenes. That is what they do. That is how they do it. How many different people do we have behind the scenes, whether it's in the corporate commercial side of stuff or it's in not-for-profit and charities, or even just within their own families, who sometimes are the ones that are never seen or never really heard because you come from a giant family and everyone else is really loud. So I think there's definitely different considerations we have when we want to show our gratitude to someone.
And I also think that we like it or not, you are operating in a context, a cultural context. So when you're new to an organization, you may inherit certain things that previous management, other managers who look like you, talk like you, act like you, have a similar background. You may inherit some things that you didn't earn or didn't merit, and you have to recognize that you're being perceived out of that paradigm that people have. And so just the best of intentions and the sincerest of motives is not sufficient. You have to be aware of the context in which you're operating.
And speaking of context, Kathy, you've said that you like to get personal with gratitude. You like to customize your gratitude for the person. What are some of the ways that you've done that?
Yeah, I try to get creative in the sense of, just what several of you have spoken about, which is the thank you, thank you, thank you. How do you make it special, especially when the time warrants it? And so I've done the personal thank you notes. I have, if the feedback is coming from, say, another leader in the company, depending on the recipient, I may ask them to personally show the gratitude. I do silly things like take a those little note cards that we used to study with, and I'll put a pack of extra gum on it and I'll say, thanks for going the extra mile. I have done certificates of recognition, and they will hang them in their cube. And so it really depends on the person. I told them a silly story a couple times ago about my Pop Rocks, where I'll give a pack of Pop Rocks with a note that says, you rock. There's a lot of, for people looking for ways to get creative, just go out to Pinterest. It's a great source of ideas for getting creative. And the reason I do it in that manner is I'm trying, again, to fuel that energy of the team.
Kathy, I'm going to challenge you to change your vocabulary.
Okay.
Stop the word silly.
I will really try
silly.
to.
Yeah.
Oh, silly.
It's really interesting because we did, when we talk about what are the games we play as leaders to get our team on board and do stuff and how we get them to engage with each other, we would have, it's like employee of the month. Okay, so I want to acknowledge you for being employee of the month. And it's like, it's the same person every month, or it's just the very few. And I'm like, well, okay, I think there's some very practical things as leaders we need to look at here when it comes to our gratitude and how we get that engagement going with each other, not just us to them, but between them, I think, and between the teams, not just within one team. So we used to do things like we had a triplicate little card thing. And what would happen is they would say, on top of the first note, oh, wow, you really saved my bacon with that customer right now by helping me out with that. That was really cool. Thanks for that. Because again, it was the why. And what happened is they leave the top copy on that person's desk. So it's to that person from the other one. The next copy actually used to go into a barrel, a common barrel. And then the third copy actually went into the person that was being thanked. It actually went into their personnel file, so that every time we did our performance reviews, whether it was monthly, quarterly, or whatever, we could actually see what was it that they were doing that made a difference, because each person has their own way of doing that. And then at the end of each month or quarter, it depends, every company's different, but the barrel would get a spin. So there's also that sense of luck, I guess, or that sense that we're all in this.
Yes.
And the person that spins the barrel is someone that's actually outside our team or outside our department or one of the leaders within the organization that's known by everyone. So I know that was just one example, but I think looking at it from all the different perspectives, you've got the one-on-one, you've got, okay, it's recognized by everyone, but also I'm going to be recognized as part of how I contribute to what's happening.
And I think what you just said, Simone, is essential. Again, I think that also creates a sense of belonging, a sense of committing to each other and deepening those relationships. You said something early on, though, that I disagree with, which is the employee of the month. I do not like that. I think it makes people feel,
like it.
you know, I'm never going to get it. I'm not special. And I think, you know, for one that's an overachiever type A personality, when I'm not the person that would get it, man, would it put me into a negative spiral emotionally. So I think, you know, I wanted it for people listening is thinking of the context and the impact. We always want to be making that positive impact, but I really like what you talked about. I think that's a phenomenal example.
Yeah, it's a switch from employee of the month because I've never really been overly fond of that. But if we can recognize people for how they've contributed rather than,
I love that.
Yeah, such a different context.
Would you say switch or toggle, Simone? Never mind. I'll come back to that.
That was a previous conversation.
That was a previous part of a previous conversation.
And I still don't get
yeah, we don't get it. But Patty, you've talked about blessings versus burdens and how societal pressures can put burdens on people. And can you explain that a little bit? I'm not sure I understand the burden of gratitude, or if that's what you're saying.
No, I think that blessings versus burdens is an attitude. So how am I seeing this? What am I learning from it? And I think in a past episode we talked about a reframe from this is being done to me as opposed to why is this being done for me so that I can grow and learn and move forward. But I think it comes down to intentionality because our brains are shaped by input, and all the input that is coming in shapes how we think about the world, our worldview. And when we look at the input by design, commercially, we have more commercial inputs coming at us faster and more furiously, and by design to distract and make that dopamine hit on us, right? So the importance in understanding gratitude is understanding how you intentionally allow those things into your worlds. For instance, you know, the pressure of, do I go to college or do I do a trade? Do I work in blue collar, white collar? Do I have a big house, fancy car, elite trappings, whatever? Do I go for tenure or instruction because I really love instruction, right? Am I an executive or a technician? Am I, you know, the pressures from around us that tell us who we should be, what we should buy, how we should focus, what we should look at, even just open up Microsoft Edge. I mean, it is full of an hour of distraction if you don't change the main page. So it steals our attention, it reshapes our brain, and those algorithms and we call them the dopamine wars because it's hitting us so far. Everyone's trying to grab us and grab hold of us, and there's constant interruptions. Turn your notifications off on your phone. My God, I did that 9 months ago, and it's the best thing I ever did. I don't get a notification at all that anything has come in my social media, and it's fabulous. So now I'm intentional about when I look, why I look, how I look. When we are talking about dopamine wars, we're talking about dissatisfaction and loneliness, which draws us closer to more dopamine hits. We're looking for it. And that we have to be very cautious about that because it carries nerve signals. And Simone has talked about this numerous times throughout our calls about the importance of our serotonin as it ties those synapses together in our thought processes, right? So dopamine hit creates serotonin. Serotonin creates the synapses. Then our brain begins functioning in a specific way. And if we aren't cognizant about that, it impacts our immune cell modulator, which regulates emotion, behavior, cognition, all of those things. So if we are not intentional about gratitude, we're not intentional about what comes in, it can impact us. And it's a well-rounded, huge piece of science about our physiology that's important to understand. We need good nutrition, lots of sleep, exercise, sunshine, brain boosting and gratitude inputs that push away the pressures of the society to have us take a look and say, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I don't meet standards, I'm not getting where I need to go. Gratitude shifts that. It shifts the whole piece of that self-worth weight that sits upon us.
Greg, what do you think? Do you feel that when you receive gratitude, does it elevate your self-image as well as everything else in your life, or how do you respond to
I
it?
do 100%. With a slight caveat is I think the prerequisite is it has to resonate with who I am and my perception of authenticity and genuineness. If somebody says to me something positive that just simply isn't true, it's not true. Greg, you could be the president of the United States. Actually, that's a bad one. Never mind. Greg, you could be the CEO of Hewlett Packard Corporation. I couldn't. Let's just be honest. Whatever. If you want to hire me, see me. We'll hook up. But when somebody says something that's so outrageous that doesn't resonate and is inauthentic, it's like that doesn't help me. That doesn't do anything other than, are you trying to manipulate me? Like I thought we had a thing going on. But when somebody recognizes something, and I think Patty pointed out something that I think is incredibly important, and I think we should rewind the tape and go back to that point where recognizing not just, hey, Greg, you made your sales figures, that's great, good job, as opposed to, that was a really tough region, and I really appreciate that you had to do way more cold calling than you ever thought you would have to do. It's not your thing, but you did it and you've produced the results and you're really moving it in the right direction. I appreciate your dedication and your loyalty to the cause, and the results are wonderful. I think that's very different than just, recognizing a surface level or an outcome based thing. Is like recognizing a character trait, a diligence, a dedication, a work ethic, something that is more core to somebody's being.
When you said sales and cold calling, I flashed back to a 33-seat open office in North Bergen, New Jersey, where I was working inside sales for a large company way back in the day.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It
Yeah.
was a great flashback. One thing I remember, I'll just tell you
Roy,
a quick
I'm gonna need
anecdote.
to close those deals this month. All right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was reading yesterday that Lysol is as you would imagine, in these days of pandemic, in very, very high demand. And they were one of my customers when I was in that office. And I remember the morning that as they were pressurizing their aerosol cans, they all blew up. And how grateful I was that nobody was hurt. 33,000 aerosol cans blew up. Luckily, of course, in a bomb-proof room where they did this procedure where they put them through hot bath and pressurized the containers. But I was very grateful that it was not worse than that, and so was the company that I worked for at the time. Todd, I'm gonna swing the flashlight around a little bit to you again. Thank you for coming today. It's your first visit here on KTLO. And we've been talking a lot about organizational ways that gratitude can help or contribute. Do you have some stories about that or some thoughts about that?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time as an organization paying attention to employee satisfaction, more than I've experienced in many organizations. And the focus is always, how do we show our employees that we truly need them in the roles that they're in? And this isn't a platitude. It is absolute genuine recognition that the productivity of the organization is directly dependent upon them reflecting that back to the employees in the form of gratitude. Yes, compensation is part of that, but it is a very small part of that. And as you have said on this call, it's the intrinsic things that we're truly seeking to measure. Um, uh, that would be the one story. I think all of us have the other side of the coin, the other side of the page, where you were part of an organization where it was always superficial, it was always fake, and what that did to your motivation and that of your team. Um, it's measurable. I think it's measurable in either case.
And that counts, right? I mean, if you can't measure it, et cetera, which I've written about extensively is not true, but it is important to organizations that they're able to see a difference, whether
Yes.
they're specifically tracking a metric or not. It's important to be able to see a difference. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about our, the teams that we've worked with or led. How have we seen a difference when our responses are grateful, when we express the gratitude for going above and beyond, or simply for completing a task that is really important to the organization? Kathy, I'll start with you.
Sorry, I was on mute. When you were talking, Roy, it reminded me of a time I worked at one point for a mission critical software solution, primarily healthcare, used when a patient codes, when they stroke, to get the response team. So it's high pressure. It's high pressure. I won't even go into that story. It's for another day. But we had a very, very serious situation. And we had, people flowing in and out of the cubicle, which came the cubicle became the war room. And it was literally everyone going over, everybody wanting to help. And at that moment, when we were making little breakthroughs and making progress, well, you guys know I'm a little charismatic and I like to get excited. I literally was like jumping for joy, high-fiving, just saying, you know what, look at it. We're nailing it. Let's keep going, keeping that energy up because they're getting exhausted. And obviously keeping the customer off the phone so they can focus on what they're doing. But, just in the moment and when we finally solved the issue is having that celebratory moment, not waiting till after, but right then and there, having the energy. And I literally will jump up and down and start singing. And, that really, really gets a team together, and seeing what they produce together as a team instead of individuals.
A team instead of a set of individuals. Did I hear you correctly?
Correct.
Isn't that a lovely turn of phrase right there? A team, we think about a team of oxen or a team of horses. They're joined together, right, by hardware. They're joined together and they have to work together. Otherwise, neither one of them can get where they're trying to go. It's an interesting thing. Certainly something that some people I know who specialize in teams, Greg Gregory, I'm thinking of you, would appreciate that distinction between just a group of individuals and a real team. Greg, let's talk about how gratitude affects teams.
Interestingly enough, I joined an organization as a senior leader that was fairly toxic in nature. Toxic as in overt hostility from one group to another. We're this group, we're not that group. You know how that group is. Oh, don't route a ticket over there. They'll never respond to it in time. All that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I did, because that's That's a culture that I'm very uncomfortable with. I don't like to be part of it. I don't like to condone it, and I like to make it better. And it's not because I'm this happy do-gooder, which I try to be, but it's more of a, who wants to be part of that? Who could we attract and retain that would say, you know, I really want to be part of a toxic culture where nobody likes each other, nobody trusts each other. I mean, those are not the people that I necessarily want to be hiring. And so one of the things that I did was intentionally, with the groups, recognize the efforts of another group. It's like, hey, Scott really nailed that ticket for you guys. Yeah, he really did. I appreciate that. Hey, Scott, are you over there? Come here for a minute. Like, I literally did this. And he comes bumbling over. These are people that have said words not too many weeks before I got there to each other, like tough words. I was like, hey, I was just talking to the team about the work that you did for us over here, and we really appreciate it. That makes a big difference over here. And it's just like people just started melting, literally melting. And it was kind of amazing because it wasn't even that difficult. But I'm looking at Patty because I keep going back to that, is if I can acknowledge you, if I can find something to be grateful about you, I start forming positive bonds and connections with you that weren't there previously. If I can demoralize you, dehumanize you, make you a distant, anonymous other, then it's much easier to have that negativity. But when I know you, when I connect with you, when we share some space together, and make that human connection, it's much harder to do that. Now, if we shift away from, you know, people and feelings and emotions, and you start thinking about, I got a job to do. I've got executives who really don't care all that much about, you know, the culture in my organization, other than the tangential, you know, outcomes of that. They want things taken care of. Well, I also find that we become a more productive team. We become a more effective team. We become a team that our customers have more positive feelings about, simply because we've internally, you know, we used to put in call centers, some of you know this, we used to have the mirror, and the mirror said, you know, what you see is what your customers hear. And it's a very real thing, is the way we behave, the way we treat each other, the culture that we have here is the way we're perceived within the organization. So it's not just about, you know, let's all be happy together and have some fun. Though I do want to work in Kathy's organization wherever she lands, because I like her energy. I could really like that. But if you want powerful, effective teams who are achieving the goals of the organization, it's a must. In modern organizations, we can't have this hostility, the silos, the teams that aren't working together. So it's part and parcel with digital organizations, is part and parcel with highly effective teams that are producing the results that their organizations need. It's the lifeblood between continued existence, the performance and the conformance of your organization at achieving the organizational goals. So I guess I want to turn the corner and say, this is not touchy-feely, fluffy stuff. This is serious business. And we've got to pay attention to it. It has to be done for the good of the organization.
Thanks, Greg. Simone, you talk a lot about resilience in your work, and you said that research indicates that there's a component of emotional resilience called gratitude. How does gratitude help build resilience, and what part does it play?
Well, it comes back to, if we go back over some of the other episodes, resilience is something we build within ourselves. It's not something that's given. It's something that is experienced. It's something that is comes from, again and again, being able to not just bounce back, but even bounce forward, learning the different approaches and the different techniques that gives us the strength to continue in a constant maelstrom of whatever might be happening. And hopefully we have that lovely flow where we get to easy breathe for a little while, and then something else comes along. But what we find is that we get stronger. It's like practicing swimming, you know, against the tide. Our muscles build, and we get better. Our strokes will shift according to how the waves are shifting. And this is a really important facet from a leadership perspective is that we can't do that for them on their behalf. They are going to go through this. They are going to have to feel that. But gratitude, and not just the thank you, but the acknowledgement that they have made an achievement, that they have made an impact on whatever that journey happens to be it in the business or be it personal, that they have strengthened themselves. And this actually reminds me very much of lots of things. And Greg, I'm so glad the way you talked about that. The interesting, it's not just the happy do-gooder. It's not just the general cheerleading. And anybody that is a sports fanatic, not just a fan, I mean a fanatic of their team, knows that cheerleading is more than just the rah-rah and waving pom-poms. There is a deep-seated energy that comes behind that cry that they want to push on. But it goes beyond that too, because every culture is different. Not everybody wants the whole, the flashing lights and the glitter when it comes to having that cheerleading. Some people need the intensity of a different type of cheerleading. And you can look at things like Henry V, the St. Crispin's Day speech, which was, I guess, what's the word? Hollywoodized in Independence Day movie. And, you know, we're going out there and we're going to do this. So from a leadership perspective, we can say that we know that you have this in you. We are grateful that you have this in you. We know that you can make a difference, even if they haven't done so yet. So the gratitude is not just after the event. Gratitude can actually come before the event or the situation or the context. And I think that's really important, because it's like a rallying of the troops, and they will know very quickly if it's just a marketing buzz that you're trying to put over the top of, yeah, we can do this. This is a deep-seated belief that they can feel from within that team leader, manager, executive, whoever it is actually doing it, you know, making this speech. So that's what I'd like people to really feel and understand from a resilience perspective. I need not just having the practice in that resilience, I also need the support and the hope from my leader that is going to help me go through that next part of strengthening my muscles.
Well, thank you for bringing up the whole concept of cheerleading. I plead guilty to having been a cheerleader in high school. Thank you very much. And you know, people say, what, you were a cheerleader? I can't picture you yeah, I went to an all boys school, folks. So we did what we did. I'm going to go back to language again for a minute before we wrap up here. Just mention that, you know, gracias in Spanish, gratitude itself, the words come from the Latin gratia, which is grace. It's, you know, shed his grace on thee in God Bless America and the good graces of someone. So there's a lot more than just thanks involved. And I think we've really gotten to some of that today, which is terrific. And speaking of thanks, I would like to thank the core group, of course, which includes Greg Sanker, Simone Jo Moore, Patty Blackstaff, Yebut, Bert, and our frequent flyer, Kathy Velboom. It's nice to be here with you every week. So nice to have you aboard. And we have some folks in the background. Mark Thomas is out there, and Alfredo D'Ambrosio is out there. And Todd Davis, your first visit today. That's awesome. Thank you for coming. And we'll be back. What are you showing us, Simone? Oh, you're pouring your wine from the card Bordeaux. Okay, got it. We got it.
I'm just making sure that I can get every drop out of it because it matters.
Right. It's like gratitude in that way.
Exactly.
You want to get that last drop of gratitude out. Okay. Well, thanks for watching KTLO.
Thanks for talking.
Keeping the learning on.